Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy, Belanger. Up next, 5 games that mattered from Sunday. Let's talk. With 30 teams already having played in week 3, there's 5 games, with one of the biggest remaining tonight, but there's 5 games from Sunday's slate of games that really stood out. It really speaks to where the league is right now. Let's get into it. So the first game I want to highlight for you guys is going to be the Green Bay Packers, who took on the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Green Bay Packers came in as one of the undefeated teams from week 2. Standing at 2-0 at the top of the NFC North, Green Bay looked like one of the best teams in the league, but they definitely had been playing like the best team in the NFC. And what we saw yesterday from the Cleveland Browns and the Packers was kind of shocking. See, now I understood that the Cleveland Browns have one of the best defenses in the league. They just don't have an offense to support them. But I did think that the Cleveland Browns had the best front in the league, and it showed yesterday. The Cleveland Browns absolutely put the clamps on the Green Bay Packers offense, who were averaging around 27 points per game. They had beat good competition. I think they beat Detroit, and then I think they beat the Commanders. And so Cleveland, no sweat. But Cleveland had something to say about it. Yeah, special teams did get involved, but in order to win in the NFL, you have to have all of your elements of the game, offense, defense, and special teams working. And so the Cleveland Browns captured their first win against the Green Bay Packers. Now, does that mean the Green Bay Packers are not a good team? Not at all. But it just means they come back down to earth, and they now can be looked at as just another team who is trying to find their way over the first 4-6 weeks of a season. So shout out to the Cleveland Browns for standing up. But what it also does, as a Baltimore Ravens fan, it gives me a little more respect. I had a lot of respect for the Ravens win last week against Cleveland, but it gives me a higher level of respect for the win against Cleveland and how we showed offensively, being able to put up 34 points against this Cleveland Browns defense, but then they put the clamps on the Green Bay Packers offense, a team who has a better offensive line. They have a solid running game, a host of young weapons offensively. That's a good win. And I think our win last week stands out even more. But now, week 3 is not done for us because we got work to do tonight. Let's get to another game that I thought was a standout game, something to really take note of. That was the Sunday night football game, the Chiefs versus the Giants. Now, on the scoreboard, kind of a lopsided victory, 22-9. But in that first half, the New York Giants played them to the wire. Here you have another solid defense who just does not have an offense to support them. And what we learned from this game, if you watched it in part or whole, what we learned was it really shows how vulnerable the Kansas City Chiefs are along that offensive line and offensively as a whole. Now, don't get me wrong. Kansas City is still going to be a viable team simply because you have 15 at quarterback. But it really kind of shows how vulnerable this team is this season and how much they miss Rice. I think they will go to another level offensively when Rice comes back. So teams had better take advantage of this lull that the Kansas City offense seems to be in, because when Rice comes back, I think this team takes off. So shout out, man, to the Chiefs for getting a win. And hey, to the New York Giants and their fan base, you guys need to probably go ahead and rally around Dart and see if you guys can get him on the field, because Russell Wilson ain't it. I think at this point in Russell Wilson's career, all he has is the deep ball. And if that's not landing, then he's just average at best. He is not a starter at this point. And so you guys better start shouting out Jackson Dart, see if you can get him on the field, a guy who has some dual threat ability. Because you can't do worse. You can't do worse because you're wasting top-end talent on your defense, especially along that defensive front. Let's get to the third game that I think mattered from Sunday, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Los Angeles Rams. This was a game against two teams that I think could be there at the end in the NFC Championship. Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts. At this point, Hurts is a veteran. Matthew Stafford is a long-term veteran quarterback in this league. They're both Super Bowl champions. And both quarterbacks kind of played above average yesterday. Both run games were kind of stifled. Both defenses stood up at different points, but the Philadelphia Eagles put this game away with special teams play. And I think what we're learning this season is how important special teams is. We've seen block punts, we've seen block kicks, that being field goals. We've seen stuff picked up in return for touchdowns. We've seen punt returns. We've seen kick returns. And so you're really seeing how important special teams is. And that's what you saw yesterday from the Philadelphia Eagles. The Rams actually had control of this game for the most part, basically all the way through the third quarter. Philadelphia put together a little comeback, and the Rams were in position to kick what should have been a winning field goal. They get that field goal blocked, game over. And so, although Philadelphia has not played like Philadelphia last season, their offense seems to be just kind of average, although they have mostly the same players. Saquon Barkley in the run game just seems to be average. The defense, for the most part, just seems to be average. They're not locking teams down and blowing out teams. They're not taking the ball away. And that doesn't mean they won't. It just means they're not doing it right now. But when they needed a play, one of their better defensive players stepped up, bust through the line, and blocks the field goal. And the rest was history. And so I don't think it's any implication on the Rams necessarily. I think they're still a good team. Their pass rush is still legit. What they're doing offensively makes them legit. And so I think they're still well balanced. But I think it was just a hard-fought game yesterday. And the team that made the last play won it. So shout out, man, to the Eagles, man, for staying undefeated. And I think both of these teams in the NFC, including the Packers, are some of the teams that will be in that NFC Championship game. All right. When we look more around the league, there's two games left, two AFC games. One, let's go with the Indianapolis Colts, who won again yesterday, moving their record to 3-0. And you did not see this coming from the Colts. Nobody can say they predicted this. Nobody thought that Daniel Jones would sign late and kind of be having an MVP level season. Now, I know that's a little obnoxious to say, but he has his team playing well. He's throwing the ball well. He's not turning the ball over. They're undefeated. The defense is playing well. Running game is on point. And so I don't see a reason why this changes for the Indianapolis Colts. They're in a mostly weak division, which they have control over right now. Their schedule is not high end this season, which they should continue their winning ways. And in truth, they have a 3-game lead on the Houston Texans. And so when you look at the Indianapolis Colts, could they win this division? At this point, I'm going to say yes. When you're a good team and you're well coached and you're playing like it, you should beat the teams you're supposed to beat. They were supposed to beat the Dolphins. They're a better team. They were supposed to beat whoever they beat yesterday. I can't remember who they beat. But I think the Indianapolis Colts are mostly for real. But I think that's going to depend on if Daniel Jones can stay the course. We know we've seen Daniel Jones play well and become a Pro Bowler, and then things begin to break down. But I think with this offensive line that he's playing behind, the running game, the collection of wide receivers, and a defense that supports it, I don't see a reason why the Indianapolis Colts turn around at this point. And so shout out, man, to Daniel Jones, man, for getting his groove back for sure and getting things together up in Indianapolis. Let's go to the last game I'm going to talk about, and that was the Houston Texans versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, let me be clear. The Houston Texans are a collection of really talented players. Offensively, you have C.J. Stroud, you have Nico Collins, a 1-2 punch offensively, and then defensively, you're solid from front to back. You got 2 bookend edge rushers. You got a really nice secondary young talent led by Derek Stingley. And so you have everything you need to be successful in Houston. They're just not. This offensive line is suspect. CJ Stroud isn't playing good ball regardless of the offensive line. The run game isn't going, and this defense is on the field too much to make a difference at this point. And so you have to ask, is Jacksonville better than Houston? I don't think so. I don't think Jacksonville's that good. But when you're not playing good and you start to doubt what's in front of you, which I think is what CJ Stroud problem is, I think that things could begin to slide for the Houston Texans. I still think they're well coached and, of course, talented, like I stated. But I think they're in some trouble because right now the Colts are absolutely 3 games up. They're 3-0. Houston's 0-3. The Colts have 2 games against the Texans. Of course, they're in the same division. If the Colts capture just one of those victories against the Texans, the Colts will win this division. The Colts will absolutely win this division. And because Houston is still playing a first place schedule. Houston still has to play Kansas City. Houston has to play Buffalo. Houston has to play the Baltimore Ravens. And so I think they may be in some trouble for sure. Houston may be one of the teams who makes a move at some point during this season. But here's the question. What do they need? What does Houston need in order to get on track? Honestly, I don't care. I don't. I'm just talking about ball, right? And so shout out, man, to the Colts, like I said again. But, hey, you got to win. That's all this league is about, is winning. And that's what they did yesterday, man. So those are the games that I think mattered yesterday. The games that we talked about were division winners from last season, playoff teams from last season. And then, of course, with the Indianapolis Colts, you have a surprise team who stands at the top of the AFC North. And with the Cleveland Browns, they just don't have offense to support what they got going on defensively. So those are the 5 things I think mattered from yesterday. So you guys let me know what you guys saw, what stood out to you, what mattered to you from Sunday's slate of games. And we'll be back a little later with some Baltimore Ravens versus Lions commentary. I'm out.